Japan Travel Smart podcast is an original, standalone media project. We remain unaffiliated with any travel agency service or similar commercial venture. This is Japan Travel Smart. My name's Johnny, and I hope you join me to discover a better Japan travel experience. Welcome back to Japan Travel Smart. This is your travel companion Johnny, and this is journey number 21. Learn from my most egregious mistakes traveling in Japan. Japan Travel Smart is a bi-weekly podcast all about the joy of travel through Japan, far and wide, from the perspective of a frequent visitor who just can't get enough of the place that does it best. This is your one-stop shop for the very best of Japan travel, including novel advice and Japan-specific tips to keep you ahead of the game. We cater to first-time and repeat Japan visitors alike in hopes of making the country shine at its very best, regardless of interest, budget, or time of year. So this time in JTS podcast, I've decided to open up a bit and try something different. This will be a more personable and intimate episode where I open up a bit to share a few of the most important lessons I've learned from my biggest blunders as a tourist in Japan. The idea here is not just to lay bare my humanness in the mistakes that I've made while traveling around Japan, but also hopefully tell you about things that you can learn from and that may spare you from the same ridiculous gaffes that I've had. I've managed to compile a nice recap of incidents that happened that I was able to remember at this time, but there's so many things that I can't even recall at this point, and these are just some examples in a long history of Japan Travel Smart being less than smart for sure. I guess I should say that most of my egregious mistakes can be considered banal and not that big of a deal. But there are some things here that we can all definitely learn from. And the thing that you may find interesting is that I have stories, not just from my first visits to Japan, but there are also things that keep happening to me, even this year on my most recent trip. You guys should realize I keep making silly mistakes even after all this time. The first situations I wanted to recall are related to coin lockers in Japan. Coin lockers are incredibly useful and practical to use, more so in Japan than in other places. This is because they're so ubiquitous. The idea is to always have the option of a place to store your luggage and belongings temporarily as you go about your day. This is especially useful on days when you have to change hotels and move yourself to a different accommodation. Now, even though most hotels will store your luggage at the desk, even before check-in time, you might not want to travel all the way to your next hotel just to offload luggage. You will find coin lockers to use, mostly in transit stations, but they're also found in many other areas in the city. There are usually different sizes of coin lockers to use, and costs usually range between 300 and 700 yen, or maybe more these days. There also exist different types of coin lockers, including coin-operated analog ones and all digital ones that will take transit cards as payment rather than cash. We should note, though, that the vast majority of coin lockers that you'll find out there are actually of the coin-operated type. So this is one of the several reasons why it may be important to you to carry cash on a Japan trip. And if you know you'll be relying on coin lockers, a good tip is to save your 100 yen denomination coins to have them handy for your next locker storage. With that bit of background information, we're ready to bring up our first unfortunate incident related to coin lockers. This actually happened on one of my most recent visits to Japan, and it's also one of my worst mistakes. This is because I accidentally broke one of these coin lockers one time. I was ready to use this coin locker like I have any other. It was a 500 yen coin operated locker. I started inserting my 100 yen coins and noted that the coins were not sliding in the slot very easily, which should have been a clear warning of what was to come. By the time I tried inserting the 5th coin, I realized that the coin slot had jammed. I should note that this incident happened at the Dentetsu Izumoshi Station out there in Izumo City, Shimane Prefecture in western Japan, overseeing the Sea of Japan. There is very little English to read in a part of Japan like this. As it turns out, I could not read the sign indicating that the 500 yen lockers only took 500 yen coins. I only realized this when I scanned the sign with my translation app. When I saw the monumental nature of my screw-up, I immediately notified the station attendant and explained what had happened. He returned 400 yen to me from his desk, but the locker itself was left alone for the time being. When I was back at the station later that day, I went to check out that locker, and there was now an empty hole where the coin receptacle was supposed to be. Now, it's not unusual to see coin lockers out of order, but of course, I felt incredibly bad about being responsible for disabling one. Up until that point, I honestly believed that coin-operated lockers only ever took 100 yen coins. That's why I'm very deeply sorry to Ichibata Electric Railway, and I hope you guys at least got that locker working again soon. This anecdote really pains me because you're always trying to do things right, and you want to leave things as you found them as a guest in another country. You hear stories about tourists in Japan that, well, let's just say there's people that aren't really striving to be their most exemplary selves. And you never want to be a part of that. You want your experience to leave a net positive for the place that you went to and leave a positive impact. I've also taken part in volunteering and cultural exchange activities in Japan, and I like to think it has helped to offset a bit of that footprint that I've left, but that's a different story for sure. The takeaway here is that some mistakes are going to be really difficult to avoid just because of the language barrier. Even if you're in a rush, it's going to pay off to take your time with some things. Well, in Japan, there are signs everywhere, and maybe it's not practical to stop to translate everything, but coming short of actually learning to read the language, maybe sometimes you want to make extra sure and take the time to pull out your camera phone with the translate feature just to make sure you know what the sign is actually about. Speaking of coin lockers, I actually have a different situation to recall related to them. I guess we should say that by no means you should be afraid to learn to use coin lockers in spite of what's happened to me. Anyway, because I was having to change hotels that time, the most useful place to leave my suitcase for the day would be while transferring at Tokyo's Grand Central Station, or rather it's simply known as Tokyo Station. If you're not familiar with it, Tokyo Station is huge and easy to get lost in. For that same reason, I wouldn't necessarily recommend a novice traveler to store their belongings at a large transit station like Tokyo Station, at the very real risk of being unable to later locate the exact spot where you left your luggage without assistance. Actually, one tip I can offer is to always take a photograph of the vicinity of the area where you left your luggage stored. But even then, it might be tricky to relocate it. I've never actually been in a situation where I'm unable to find my coin locker again, but Tokyo Station is always busy and bustling, and it might actually take a while of looking around to find an unused coin locker. I ended up storing my suitcase at one of the many passages that are part of the station. Now what happened was that I intended to return to the station that same evening, and it was around 10 p.m. when I got back, and it took me a while of shuffling around the station to realize that it wasn't that I couldn't find the passageway at all, but the way to the specific passageway had already been closed off for the night. Tokyo Station was still busy with commuters, but there are sections of major transit stations that will start closing down before the last train of the day. This meant that I wouldn't be able to get my suitcase back until the following day, and it would remain secure in the station in the meantime. So I wasn't able to freshen up and get a fresh change of clothes until after I came back here from my hotel the next morning. I should state that, luckily enough, I had my most important possessions on me, including my passport, which would have been necessary to check me in at my hotel. In case you didn't know, any visitors to Japan are actually required to carry their passport on their person at all times. Actually, one other thing that threw me off that one time was the exact location of the correct terminal to unlock my coin locker. In this case, these were the digital style of lockers, and there were many different sets of lockers along the wall, but there are also different screen terminals meant for different groupings of lockers, so you couldn't use any terminal to unlock your particular locker, and I believe my confusion stemmed from the fact that I was trying to use the nearest screen to my own locker, but that one corresponded to a separate group of lockers, and I had to be using the next one over, and it took me a while to figure this out. So Tokyo Station is not the only complicated transit station in the city. This next anecdote is about the time we almost missed our express train at Shinjuku Station. Shinjuku Station is a huge, sprawling, dungeon-like transit facility that people are often scared about. Personally, I think it's not that bad, or at least not nearly as bad as Tokyo Station. Now, under any normal circumstance, and even back at that time for us, there would have been no way that we decided to arrive at Shinjuku Station with little time to spare to connect to our next departure. What happened was that even though we had an early resort train booked at Shinjuku, the hotel we were staying at a few stops over was one of those hotels that includes breakfast in their rate. We wanted to make sure to take advantage of a free breakfast, but I also estimated that the opening hours for breakfast would require us to eat quickly in order to catch the subway to Shinjuku and then make our train. Of course, we ended up having to make a mad dash for it. And, well, yeah, it was a bit nerve-wracking to navigate this massive transit station in a rush, but we did still make the train with time to spare. On most any trip to Japan, I'll be picking up a new umbrella on the first day I'll need it. One of the things I was struggling with in one of my earliest times in Japan, though, was losing them. Because it got pretty rainy throughout that particular trip, after I lost my first umbrella, I kept having to purchase one on 2 more occasions after that. I know I accidentally left behind an umbrella on the luggage rack of the Shinkansen. Now, I do recommend heading to the nearest konbini and purchasing the largest size umbrella available to you to maximize your sightseeing. Needless to say, you want to keep that umbrella on you until the end of your visit, as chances are you will have to use it again. Now, on that very same trip, I made it all the way to my departure airport to leave Japan when I suddenly realized I still had my non-foldable umbrella with me. In my inexperience at the time, I decided that I didn't want to carry the umbrella past security, and in a very spur-of-the-moment decision, I decided to ditch the umbrella by leaving it placed beside the doorway right before security. I really shouldn't have done that in Japan. Places like airports in Japan have storage rooms full of lost items, and more recently with the surge in international tourism, there's been reports of an increasing number of suitcases. Yeah, entire suitcases being left behind by people. These items all end up in storage areas before anything can ever be done about them. More recently, I've made it a habit to bring my umbrellas back with me instead of giving them away before leaving. The thing is, there's no shortage of left umbrellas in Japan, but we always seem to be missing a nice umbrella in good shape back at home. So I just bring them back now. You're actually allowed to carry a loose umbrella on a plane separate from your personal item. I really don't mind carrying back the umbrella anymore, even if I'm flying back and connecting to places where rain isn't expected and no one else is carrying such a thing. In any case, whatever you decide to do, don't just ditch your personal belongings at the airport. Speaking of the airport on the day you're going to leave Japan, I have a habit to enjoy one last nice and lean gyudon bowl on the day I have to leave. My favorite chain is Sukiya. That time, because I was actually connecting at Haneda Airport to fly back, and because I had a fairly long connection here, and because there's no Sukiya in the vicinity, and because I was really craving Sukiya, I decided to take the train just a couple stops away from the airport in the neighborhood of Otaku. Now, one of the things I have a habit of doing is to try to have the cash I carry in yen completely spent by the time it's time for me to leave, including the balance on my transit card. It's just something I do. On this occasion, I realized I had just enough cash left to take the train into town and back to the airport if I also paid in cash for my bowl of gyudon. However, I miscalculated the size of my order and I ended up short of the amount to pay for the return trip to the airport by train. I really wanted to avoid the idea of making a new ATM withdrawal of yen on my debit card and be hit with the ATM fee just to have the cash for a train ride. I also didn't feel like simply hauling a taxi back to the airport if I had other options. What other options did I have? It's actually possible to pay for a train ticket on a ticket machine with your credit card. This was the first time I attempted to do this. The machine asked for the PIN number for my credit card, but I didn't actually know the PIN number for my credit cards. I then tried my debit card, but the train ticket machine wasn't accepting debit cards as payment. That was a bummer, but then I really started thinking. It's still a decent number of hours until my flight departs. It's a nice and cool night outside. All I ever travel with is a carry-on suitcase, and I am a fit guy. Is it actually possible to make it to Haneda Airport on foot from the nearby neighborhood? I wouldn't have minded it, and I was actually curious. Before I tried it though, I decided to look it up online, and surely enough, someone has already asked if you're able to walk to Haneda from nearby. As you might already know, Japan is very pedestrian friendly in general, but I wanted to make extra sure, and I did get confirmation online. So I keyed in walking directions on my phone and started to make my way on the flat 4-kilometer walk that would take less than an hour to get me to the airport. Before you wonder if this worked out for me, the answer is yes, it worked out just fine. There was only one part of the way where it's a bit confusing on where to follow. As you come out onto a highway and continue walking along it, I realized that you'd want to make sure to use the pedestrian crossing to be on the side of the highway where you'll eventually find the airport. You won't be able to cross if you continue walking from the opposite side. Walking to Haneda Airport actually allowed me to discover a location that I wasn't aware of until then. On the way to the airport around the parking areas, there's a large building that you can enter that eventually connects directly to the airport terminal. This would be Haneda Airport Garden, a shopping and hotel complex that's easy to miss if you're simply taking the train directly into the airport terminal. There's eateries, a conference hall, a convenience store, and there's even a Sento bathing facility. I guess what he wanted to say coming out of that anecdote is, I got to do something like that, and now I feel like I don't need to ever do it again. One of my first times in Japan, because I wasn't packing enough clean underwear, I decided that I'd purchase a couple of extra boxer shorts on arrival in Tokyo. I usually make sure to have at least a week's worth of changes during a trip in order to not have to do my laundry that often. If I'm shopping back home, I guess I'm doing this at the local department store, so I figured I'd try the same thing in Japan. Of course, I still was not too familiar with where it's actually possible to buy certain items and everyday necessities in Japan. Well, the thing is, I didn't just hit up any department store in Tokyo. I ended up at Mitsukoshi's flagship store in Nihonbashi, central Tokyo. For those of you who don't know, Mitsukoshi is an upscale department store building that even has a storied history in the city going way back. To be completely fair, I am certain this won't be the most expensive location in the world to shop for something like boxer shorts in the men's section, but I was still looking at 3,200 yen for a single pair of boxer shorts. And this was at a time when the yen was strong. The funniest thing is that it was only after I arrived back at my hotel with my 2 pairs of very neatly packaged boxer shorts, and I give them credit for that. Those girls packaged the boxer shorts for me very nicely, that I decided to visit the nearest convenience store, and I then realized that there exist convenience stores with a larger selection of everyday items, and surely enough, there were boxer shorts available to purchase at a fraction of the cost. Dirt cheap, actually. And the first time I had seen something like that in a convenience store was the very next day. So if you're wondering, I'm the type of person that would have settled for the convenience store boxers. I mean, I am pretty sure that those were good enough to use, with it being Japan and all. It seems like I keep wanting to come back to mistakes I've made related to machines in transit stations, because here I have another situation to bring up. In Japan, you want to be using a transit card to get yourself around public transit. The neat thing about transit cards in Japan, also known as IC cards, is that they offer a great degree of interoperability, meaning that a single card in balance is going to allow you to use different transit systems from different rail companies, including ground rail, subway, and even third sector rail and bus service, all with a single card. Now, what if you instead wanted to purchase a standard ticket on occasion? There are reasons why someone would sometimes want to use a ticket and not their IC card. That's probably why standard ticket machines are still around and widely available at stations. You may want to buy a single ticket to easily get rid of some of your excess change, for instance. The only thing you need to know to purchase your single ticket is the fare that you're going to pay. The easiest way to determine the fare for your planned trip is to key in the trip on your Maps and Transit application. This should quickly tell you the fare for your planned trip. Now all you need to do when you get to a standard ticket machine for commuter trains is select the correct yen value for your ticket and then insert the required amount. Voila! Be sure to keep your ticket during your trip and insert it again at the gates at your destination to exit. So, if the different IC transit cards are all compatible on different transit systems, does that mean that standard ticket machines at the same station also issue tickets that are interoperable? No, of course not. For starters, different rail companies have different fare structures, and standard ticket machines only allow you to select preset yen amounts. So, for example, if I already know that my fare is 360 yen, and I have located a ticket machine that allows me to buy a ticket for 360 yen, that means that I have to be using the correct ticket machine for a trip on my intended rail company, right? I mean, it's unlikely that an entirely different rail company charges the same fare, right? Wrong. And I learned this the hard way. If you try to enter a fare gate with a ticket from a different rail company, it will close the gate on you. So just to be sure, you may always want to use the nearest ticket machines to the gates of wherever you intend to go. Because this happened to me once, I took my ticket to the manned ticket window for the other rail company, and they were kind enough to refund my unused ticket. Sleeping commuters on Japanese trains always seem to know exactly when their stop is. At one moment, they seem to be completely far gone, and then they suddenly wake up and are ready to get off at their exact destination. It's really tempting to also doze off for a bit on the train after a long day of sightseeing, but you want to be sure that you don't actually miss your stop. I haven't actually missed my stop, but I instead lost track of my timing and got off a station early. This is much more likely to happen when you're unfamiliar with the line and the station names that you're using, or when you're having to work with stations that are similarly named and contiguous with each other. It's always helpful to have real-time trip tracking from your Maps application Transit Route Search, but the GPS signal will get cut off underground, and sometimes your GPS fails to track properly, even traveling on above-ground lines. Assuming that trains are running on the posted schedule, the best may be to take note of your exact arrival time for each trip that you make. At this point, I'm using trains so casually and absent-mindedly that I might have no clue where I'm actually at and no idea what time it should be that I'm supposed to get off. One time after spacing out, I had to quickly step off the train and check the platform because I already thought I might have passed my stop by a good margin before determining that wasn't the case and quickly getting back on. Perhaps one more thing that's good to say is to maybe carry around a couple of first aid bandages, especially if you're someone like me who's prone to silly accidents. The first time it happened to me, I managed to cut myself handling my own portable tripod, of all things. And believe me when I tell you, I was really bleeding out from this cut, and without any band-aids on me, I had to resort to toilet paper from a public bathroom to steep the bleeding. And then there's things that happened to me when I was volunteering, like you can seemingly cut yourself with a Japanese kitchen knife if you so much as look at it. Either bring a couple band-aids from home or pick them up from a convenience store, but be sure to have them actually on you during your trip at any time. And those are some of my most unfortunate mishaps as a traveler in Japan. Perhaps nothing too crazy, but definitely things I've been able to learn from. I think the important takeaway here is that things will always happen, and it may cause you embarrassment, or, well, one thing I've learned for sure is that it's almost guaranteed that you incurred an unexpected expense that wasn't in the budget. But you want to be stoic about these things happening, and there's no reason for it to get to you. You just have to accept that it comes with the territory, and you end up with an amusing story to tell. And of course, be sure to apologize to whoever it is that needs apologizing to. There's two things that we got before we leave. The first is that we're still looking to maybe collaborate with someone and perhaps having a guest on, but so far we're still looking out for a good fit, as it would have to be within the sphere of Japan travel content. So we will keep looking out, and you're free to reach out to us at japantravelsmart@gmail.com and let us know what you're about. The other thing is that, once again, if you have any strong thoughts or simple feedback on what we do and what we should focus on, we are always open to hear from our listeners, so don't miss out on the chance to steer the content of Japan Travel Smart to your liking while the opportunity to do so is open. Once again, reach out to us at japantravelsmart@gmail.com. My name's Johnny, and I'm signing off with your reminder to, above all, be smart, and everything else will fall in place.